this is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV. This year, Elf Cosmetics went all out with an absurdly funny telenovela called Melissa. It stars Melissa McCarthy, Nicholas Gonzalez, Itati Cantoral, and Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil. The Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil is an ultra-glossy tinted lip oil that nourishes, hydrates, and enhances your lips' natural color.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
At Lowe's, get up to 35% off select major appliances. Plus, members get free delivery, install, and more when you spend $2,500 on select major appliances. Lowe's, we help, you save. Valid through 2/25 while supplies last. Selection varies by location. Excludes Massachusetts, Maryland, Wisconsin, New Jersey, Florida. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Visit Lowe's.com/terms for details. Subject to change.
Visit your nearby Lowe's on East 17th Avenue in Hutchinson.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Do you want to find a stress-free way to buy your next car? Start at CarMax and shop your way. If you want to browse with confidence, get pre-qualified online with no impact on your credit score and shop cars within your budget. From luxury cars to family rides, CarMax has options for almost every price range, including more than 25,000 cars priced under $25,000. So, hey, want to get started? Just head to CarMax.com for details and get pre-qualified today. Want to drive? CarMax.
Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. I can't help myself. I have always been fascinated by the music industry. Parts of it. I've always been fascinated by people that can create things seemingly out of nothing. The ability to turn a phrase or work with instrumentation that's what's so amazing to me, because I can't play an instrument. I can only hear what they've created, and the idea that they can just summon these things at will many times. And there's so many out there that are really tremendous, and they go their entire lives without recognition. But the case that we're going to discuss today, that person doesn't fit that bill. The person we're going to discuss today is known worldwide. He's known worldwide. His band or former band is known worldwide, even though he's been dead since 1994. Of course, you know who I'm talking about. I'm talking about Kurt Cobain, the lead singer and guitarist for the band Nirvana. And today, we're going to talk about his death. You say, why? Well, it just so happens that a study has recently been completed, and the forensic analysis, according to this team, that they have concluded that Kurt Cobain's death, in their opinion, is not a suicide. It's actually a homicide. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags. The early 90s, Dave, I can't really recall what type of music I was listening to. Grunge is kind of I've listened to it, and there's some of those bands that fit within that genre that I did enjoy. I enjoyed some of Nirvana's music, but I was a grown man, working on family, full-time job. I wasn't hanging out, with kids that are, 10 to 15 years younger than I at that time. This was more their music, but you couldn't escape Nirvana. I think one of the things I watched it several times over the years. I don't know if you ever checked it out, was the Unplugged session that Nirvana did on MTV. And it was amazing that those harmonies could be created in that kind of acoustic environment. And he was an amazing artist, I have to say that. But I think that even though I didn't know a lot about him at the time, I think that I was shocked, when I found out that he was dead, as much of the country was. We've had so many of these artists over the years that have succumbed to various things. It's always a shock, I guess. You didn't see it coming, but you know what they say, Dave. Still waters run deep, right?
It's interesting when you talk about grunge music, Joe. There's like the four big ones. You've got Kurt Cobain with. They're kind of like, they're at the top of the pyramid, because of Kurt. But Nirvana, Soundgarden, Alice in Chains, and did I say Soundgarden?
Yes, you said Soundgarden.
Pearl Jam. That was what I was trying to think of.
Yep.
Is Pearl Jam and Nirvana were right up,
Yep.
And it's I was doing music radio at the time.
Yeah, I was thinking you're right in the middle of this. I mean, you're right in the middle of radio at this point in time.
But the thing is that Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Soundgarden and Alice in Chains, they were that grunge music, okay?
Yeah.
It's like any other type of music on the radio. It has to be a broad appeal, mass appeal,
right?
For radio to be able to sell it, to get commercials. And so if you're running so grunge music had a place on the air, but it didn't grow on the air. It did not grow in radio. I'll give you an example. In the mid to late 90s, one of a band called Korn. Okay.
Yeah.
Metal. You remember who I'm talking about?
Oh,
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you realize that band played in the Birmingham at the BJCC in downtown Birmingham, Alabama, back in the late 90s. Did not have one song played on any radio station.
Yep.
In that market, not one, and sold it out in 30 minutes. It's like that's that type of music that attracts a certain audience. Doesn't require mainstream media to become successful. It finds its own place, and that's what grunge did.
I got to tell you, I understand. I've heard this description before, that it was kind of the 80s were so over the top, and the term I like to use is garish. The big hair and the spandex pants and all of that stuff.
Oh yeah.
And the grunge movement was the antithesis of all of that. It's really it's sparse, I think, to a great degree. It's broken down, and amazingly, it goes back to the early roots, I think, of popular music, back in the 50s, where it's the music is great and fun, but you have these people were really poets, I think. The lyrics, that they could create, to kind of describe the world, though their view many times was very, very dark, very, very dark, but it just had this kind of grittiness to it that I think appealed to a lot of people. And you're right. Can you imagine? Well, I know you can, but for me as an outsider, just looking at it, I'm thinking, if somebody's trying to sell me something at a radio station, they say, well, you can play, I don't know, whatever the hell it was, White Snake or something like this, even Guns N' Roses. I've never been a fan. Or, or you can use these guys that look like they haven't bathed.
Right.
The hair looks greasy.
Yeah.
They're not kept. And this music sounds like nothing you've ever heard before. But for some reason, it was, and it caught or captured the zeitgeist of the time. People were fed up with the commercial and kind of the plastic synthetic nature, I think, of a lot of the hairband music and all that stuff that's created.
I still think Nirvana cracks me up, Joe. Here's the best explanation for Nirvana.
Yeah.
It Smells Like Teen Spirit. Go listen to it when you get, or listen to it now. I don't care. You don't know the words unless they're written out in front of you. You don't know what's being said. You don't know what's being sung. You can't. Nobody does. And the thing is that when Weird Al Yankovic wanted to do a parody of Smells Like Teen Spirit, he meets with Kurt Cobain.
Yeah,
and they're purist of the grunge movement. He would never meet with Weird Al Yankovic. Yeah. You know what? Because at his heart and soul, he was a businessman. He was an artist, but he was also you got to have look, you can be an artist and nobody buy your art, and you got to have a job to feed yourself. Right.
Yeah.
And Cobain knew that. He wasn't an idiot. He was not an idiot. You got to remember, he was not an idiot. He was an addict and he was a lot of things. He was a talented man, but he was not an idiot. And he meets with Weird Al, and he's like, well, you're not going to make it about food, are you? That's all he could think of Weird Al doing, eat it, And when Weird Al was like, no, I'm going to do the parody, making fun of how nobody can understand what you're singing.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh, that's great, man. I will tell you this one little side note on the permission ask is that Kurt Cobain did not play on the track by Weird Al. That is one of those apocryphal stories that comes out of it. But he did give his blessing, which is the whole point. He thought it was funny. He thought it was fine. And back then you had to get permission to do that. You couldn't just rip it off. And that's what, and we could do a whole show on something other than death and things like that. It'd be entertaining for me. But anyway, look, Kurt Cobain, though, he's not a victim of himself. He's not a victim of circumstances. He is an addict who became a big star. And it was his death at 27 that made him a part of the 27 Club, if you're familiar with that club, which, to this day, it breaks my heart when I see that 27 Club, and you think of people like, Janis Joplin and Jim Morrison and
Hendrix.
Oh,
was
Hendrix,
Hendrix
he was in there. Yeah.
So they were all in the 27 Club.
Yeah.
Isn't that something?
It's always been shocking.
Yeah. And not all of those deaths resulted from necessarily self-harm.
No.
And some of them were ODs. And, talking about like Mama Cass, the big thing with her was always, choking on the ham sandwich and all that sort of stuff. And that's I think is inaccurate. She had
congestive heart failure.
It was congestive heart failure. But you think about all of these people, and there's always a mystery, that surrounds any death of a famous person. Isn't it interesting how the countless numbers of deaths that I have handled over the course of my career as an investigator, including death that was at their own hand, there's always like this weird mystique with it, that comes along, that it was something other than as advertised. I'll never forget, I was at CNN when CNN was still a thing with HLN, and I had driven in on a Sunday morning, Dave, to cover another case, some national case. And I think I was on, actually, was I on with Susan Hendricks maybe? I can't recall. Anyway, when I walked in, they said, we've got breaking news. Philip Seymour Hoffman is dead. And we want you to talk about this. And, and of course, Philip, who arguably, in my opinion, is one of the finest actors of his generation, incredible actor. Mm-hmm. He had an addiction problem.
Yep. He'd been sober for years.
Yeah. And had fallen off the wagon. And, there's so many little bits to these cases, I think. And I've never worked a case involving a major star that died as a result of something that they had done to themselves. But I've always wondered, being in the presence of someone that has died, how hard is it to extricate yourself from the shock and horror of, like, if you're an ME investigator and you're standing over the body of Kurt Cobain, is it possible to stand there and say, this is just a citizen? This is just a citizen. This is a fellow human being. They have died. Let me work it. I think about Robin Williams. Arguably, and by the way, I recommend everybody out there do this. If you want to see what an excellent postmortem report looks like, read Robin Williams' death scene investigation report. I cannot sing that investigator's praises high enough.
We need to do that show.
Oh, we really do. And if for no other reason, we need to do it just to discuss how well the report, and I know it sounds dry as toast, but believe me, the documentation of a case where someone has ended their life is critical, because this I do know. There's no one there to witness it most of the time. There's no one there to hear the final words. But in Kurt Cobain's case, there are people out there that believe that when he died, he was in fact not alone.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now, you call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms.
Oh, the big game commercials are basically must-see TV.
Well, I take bathroom breaks during the game, so I don't miss anything.
Smart. Well, Elf Cosmetics is back this year, and they decided to make a full-blown, absurdly funny telenovela that celebrates positivity, inclusivity, and accessibility.
That sounds amazing.
It's called Melissa, and it's absurd in the best way. It stars Melissa McCarthy, TV doctor, Nicholas Gonzalez, and iconic telenovela villain Itate Canto Raul. But the real star, Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil.
Oh, okay. I see where this is going.
When language fails her and her lips are dull and dry, only Glow can revive her. Melissa McCarthy fully commits by even rolling the R's with Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil.
Available in 10 shades and only $9 each.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Yes, and drench your lips in an addictive sheer wash of ultra glossy color with Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
Dave, as we are recording this right now, I want all of our friends to know that, and this is a no-no, you're not supposed to do this in broadcasting on any level, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. You can yell at me later. Today's date is February the 13th. You and I were just having a discussion before 2026, by the way. You and I were just having a discussion before we came on air. And I would say that for you and I, this week may have been one of the busiest weeks we have ever experienced professionally because of the Guthrie case. Would you agree with that? I mean, I don't know about you. My wagon's dragging and my axle's busted right now. I am just dog tired.
You've made 70-something appearances on network television in multiple countries. I mean, not just in the U.S., but I don't think it's 70, but it's I've done 3 full shows a day.
And very, very robust.
And it's crazy.
And it's been, all Guthrie all the time. Mm-hmm. And that's why this kind of took me back, because my friends at, I'm good buddies with Jesse Weber. By the way, shout out to Jesse. If you get a chance, you got to check out his new show. The standalone show comes on 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And he's gracious enough to allow me on there. Well, I've been working with him for years. Love that kid. I call him kid. And his producer reached out to me, and I thought, here we go. It's going to be Guthrie. And I think this was this previous Monday night. And to my shock, when I talked to her, she's like, so can you come on with Jesse tonight? We want to talk about, and I was waiting for Guthrie, and she said, Kurt Cobain. And I was like, what? What?
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah. There is a report, and not just a report. It is a peer-reviewed report, scientific analysis of Kurt Cobain's death from back in 1994, and this thing has been released. And I was like, wow, okay, because suddenly, when you talk about a case like we do, where we'll just go on and on and on, you feel like you're kind of saying the same thing over and over again. And suddenly, light bulb went on in my brain, and I found myself stimulated again. You know what I'm saying? It's like something I'm going to have to dig into. So, we've got this report, don't we, Dave?
Well, Joe, there are some questions about his death that are beyond emotional, beyond the fact that I don't want this guy to be dead. I mean, there are actual real questions that I've been concerned with for many, many years. When you said we were going to talk about this, my first thought was, I have always heard certain things. I've always heard that he had a massive amount of heroin in his system, and he shot himself in the head.
Yes.
Are those two things true?
Yes. Yeah, they are. Well, I'll put it to you this way. Let's go with the heroin first. Mm-hmm. First off, as you have stated, Dave, Kurt had a long-standing history of opioid abuse, specifically heroin. And one of the things that happens with heroin is that as it begins to metabolize in the body, it begins to break down into various components. And one of the primary components, because it's like the underpinning of the heroin itself, is morphine. All right. So when you're doing toxicology on someone, you're looking actually at their lethal levels. Now, I think you and I have had this discussion before, but anybody that dries out, okay, that is coming off dope, you go through that period of time. It's called being dope sick.
Yeah.
I know you have, in your own life, you have walked people through that process, and it's a horror show, man. I mean, it really is. And heroin in and of itself is probably one of the most insidious drugs that has ever existed, I would say. So with Kurt, when he died, his level of morphine in his system was actually at 1.52 milligrams per liter. That level with heroin is 3 times a normal dosage. Okay. And you think about that. And he had graduated from a treatment program at some point in time, but he was back on the dope. He had recent, and you can see this in a report, he had recent NPWs, which are needle puncture wounds, that are existent there, that I think that they actually observed at the scene, if memory serves me correctly. So let's just say he's back on the heroin train. Well, as an addict, his level of lethality is going to be disproportionate to everybody else. Say that just kind of, gee whiz, I'm going to try heroin for the first time, right? And first off, it takes more progressively for you to achieve that high. And then you have to ask yourself, is this level essentially incompatible with life? Okay. Right. So you're talking about, he has been administered a bolus that is 3 times the lethal level for a regular person. Okay. Right. He's got this on board. One of the things,
Joe,
yeah, sure.
Before you get too much further, let me stop you there, because whenever we say 3 times, like I read a report that said they had 10 times the amount.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, because it is a drug that as you begin your life in addiction, you start off here where you take a little bit and it gets you high. And then as you use it more and more and more, it requires more and more and more to get high. And so what you took when you started, it was enough to get you high. 6 months from now, if you use it every day, you're not going to get high from the same amount. You're going to be taking a lot more than you started with, depending on how you go about this. But what I'm saying is, it's possible that 6 months into your addiction, if you have that amount that you're taking at 6 months and take back to somebody who's never used it, just like you did 6 months earlier, and we inject that into somebody, they die because your body builds up a tolerance to this stuff.
It does.
It's ridiculous to say that he had 10 times the amount of a normal person. Well, I'm going to be honest with you, friends. Normal people are not addicted to heroin. They don't have anything in their system if you want to use that as your base. So, and the reason I say this is, and I've told you this, I'm going to be very brief. Having worked with recovery, I've watched many people graduate programs. They spend a year to 18 months getting sober, and heroin is so vicious.
Yeah.
And they graduate a program, and for the first time in many of their adult lives, they're sober, and they've been sober for over a year, and they're excited. They got a new life. Oftentimes they've got a whole new beginning, and they go back home, they graduate the program, and they go back to home and they use again.
Yep.
But instead of going back to the beginning, they start after being clean for 18 months at the level they left.
Yep.
And they die.
Yes, they do.
I actually have had adult parents call and ask a program, would you please warn them that about, they can't use the same amount they used when they, and you're like, dude, you're telling me that you want us to run a recovery program and then tell people as they graduate, hey, let me tell you how to use so you don't die.
Yep.
I'm not going to do that. That's ridiculous. They know it's just that it makes no sense. If it took 10 pounds before, it's going to take 10 pounds now, and that's how our brains look. And that's why people do what they do. It's why people die. It's insanity. And I hate it.
I've actually worked cases, Dave. I'll give you 2 off the top of my head of heroin ODs that involved 2 people simultaneously. Sadly, I had 2 teen boys that died in a drug rehab center.
Yeah,
who a friend had come into the center, and both of these kids had detoxed, And when I got to the center to work the case, one was laying on the floor with a tourniquet around his arm. The other was laying in the bed. They both had the frothy edematous cone that I've talked about before that was issuing from their mouths. Both of them, they were cyanotic. They were purple. That means that they were in congestive failure. And I remember being very sad about that. And you could see the staff was just absolutely so. These are the cases in the medical legal world you never hear about. You never hear about these. We always hear about homicides, right? Because that's true crime and that's kind of what we talk about. But, in our world, in the medical legal world, we cover everything. And some of the stuff that I've seen relative to drug abuse deaths, first off, they're insidious and they would shock the most resilient people out there. I actually had two guys, I'll never forget this, again, a dual death. These two guys had both been in the joint together in state prison in Georgia. One got out 2 weeks before the other one, and he promised to pick him up from the gates of the jail, and he said they were going to specifically go and party. And they did. We found them behind the old GE General Electric headquarters in Atlanta, and I'll never forget, it was in a Jeep Cherokee SUV. They were backed up against the wall, and he had picked him up from the joint. They'd gone to southwest Atlanta, bought heroin, went to this isolated location, backed in the car. One guy, this is how strong it was. One guy still had the needle in his arm, and the other guy was still holding it between his fingers. Wow. And they had a little cook cap they had created, because you have to have what they refer to as the works. And so he had like an oversized aluminum cap that's threaded like from a juice bottle or something with a cotton swab in there. And they had cooked in, and they were going to draw it up, and they had cooked in that, and then each one of them had their own. It looked like the needles that they were using were like insulin needles. Now, one of the big things, the mystery with Kurt Cobain when he's found dead, and this is highlighted in the study, which is very, very curious. I have to admit, Dave, I'm not here to completely poo-poo this story or this study in any way, because, Dave, every hypodermic needle they had at that site was capped. And so that's a
How
problem.
is that even possible? If he dies of a drug overdose, if he dies by an injection of heroin on his own, he's by himself. How is it possible that a drug that in the throat? Because I'm going to assume, wrongly, that he injected himself with this massive amount of heroin, and then he was able to do something that most addicts, most users can't do. They don't clean up as they go. Okay. It's just not a normal procedure. As somebody else has to. If you're going to find a needle that's been capped, that's been used, somebody else did it, or they did it when they woke up.
Well, one of the interesting things, and I would, I'll just state from my experience, working cases in so-called drug houses. They used to be referred to as shooting galleries, particularly when heroin was really in vogue. That term started being used back in the early 70s, back during the hippie times, when heroin really hit the streets. And heroin shooting galleries were actually very interesting compared to, say, for instance, like what they refer to nowadays. You've heard the term crack house. You've heard the term trap house. It was kind of a different environment because heroin addicts would kind of cluster together, and they would go to the shooting galleries, and many of them would take care of one another. So if you use, then there would be someone that is not currently high that if you needed anything, they would, they'd make sure you're covered with a blanket or something like that, or maybe they would clean up your works for you. And this has happened, opiates have this interesting nature to them. if you even go back to like the 1800s when you had opium dens, and they had them all over San Francisco, these sorts of places, and they would
that was
smoke.
a real thing. I didn't know that. And they would smoke opium. They had them in New York too. Actually, it was legal. Heroin wasn't even illegal until what, 1920?
Yeah. Back in the 1800s, it would have been legal, just like Coke was legal, cocaine was legal. It's weed used to be legal, all these years ago. But in the opium dens, you would have I hate to sound like I'm in a business meeting. You'd have facilitators. You'd have people that would load the pipe for them.
Wow.
Light it. The individual that was using would smoke it, and they would actually lay on like a bed and just trip right there and pass out or trip. And the individuals would take care of them in there, the ones that were facilitators, if you will. So it's got this, I think opium has this opiates, this sort of thing. It's got this interesting kind of thing. But, with Kurt, he's up in this, it's like this garage apartment, right? And some people refer to a greenhouse apartment. I've heard different takes on it. At any rate, he's in this place and he's there, man, all by himself. They're all by himself, and I think about this guy who
there wasn't some facilitator there helping him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we don't think there was.
His body was discovered by an electrician, right?
Yeah, it was. And the EMTs rolled up. There's like a glass pane that is busted out, trying to get access, to the room. He's laying on the floor. And of course, the other piece to this is that he's got, this Remington Model 11 20 gauge shotgun, which, by the way, interesting here, the Model 11 Remington is one of the earliest semi-automatic shotguns that was ever manufactured. It's got a unique history too, and you can get in a 12 gauge and a 20 gauge. And Kurt actually had the 20 gauge first, and he was actually firing birdshot out of this thing. So it's a round that is comprised of a lot of BBs, perhaps up to 30 BBs that are contained within this round. And it's primarily used for killing small game. You can go bird hunting with it. You're not going to go out and try to take down an elephant with this, but small game. You can take out grouse, pheasant, rabbits, squirrels. This sort of thing, and it's a great round for that. It's not as the energy delivery on a 20 gauge is not as ferocious as, say, like a 12 gauge shotgun. And remember, the lower the number you go in gauges as opposed to calibers, the lower the number you go in gauges, the more powerful the weapon is. Okay. So you're up in 20 gauge, 16 gauge, 12 gauge. There's a 10 gauge. I think there's an 8 gauge as well. That's becoming more and more robust. So he had this 20 gauge Remington. There's an ejected shell. There's questions about the port on this weapon and the ejection port and where the round wound up. The one thing I'll say is that with the ejection of a round, first off, it's very unpredictable because, again, with a suicide, there is no witness to this. And you don't know what the dynamics were of his body when this round is popped off, literally inside of his mouth.
Support for the show comes from Public, the investing platform for those who take it seriously. On Public, you can build a multi-asset portfolio of stocks, bonds, options, crypto, and now generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI. It all starts with your prompt. From renewable energy companies with high free cash flow to semiconductor suppliers growing revenue over 20% year over year, you can literally type any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks, builds a one-of-a-kind index, and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Then you can invest in a few clicks. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's. Go to public.com/podcast and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/podcast. Paid for by Public Investing. Brokerage services by Open to the Public Investing Inc. Member FINRA and SIPC. Advisory services by Public Advisors LLC, SEC registered advisor. Generated assets is an interactive analysis tool. Output is for informational purposes only and is not an investment recommendation or advice. Complete disclosures available at public.com/disclosures.
The big game commercials are basically must-see TV.
Well, I take bathroom breaks during the game, so I don't miss anything.
Smart. Well, Elf Cosmetics is back this year, and they decided to make a full-blown, absurdly funny telenovela that celebrates positivity, inclusivity, and accessibility.
That sounds amazing.
It's called Melissa, and it's absurd in the best way. It stars Melissa McCarthy, TV doctor Nicholas Gonzalez, and iconic telenovela villain Itate Canto Raul. But the real star, Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil.
Oh, okay, I see where this is going.
When language fails her and her lips are dull and dry, only Glow can revive her. Melissa McCarthy fully commits by even rolling the R's with Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil.
Available in 10 shades and only $9 each.
Watch the full episode of their new Elf novela on soyunbaño.com.
Yes, and drench your lips in an addictive sheer wash of ultra glossy color with Elf Glow Reviver Lip Oil.
Well, the holidays have come and gone once again, but if you've forgotten to get that special someone in your life a gift, well, Mint Mobile is extending their holiday offer of half off unlimited wireless. So here's the idea. You get it now. You call it an early present for next year. What do you have to lose? Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Limited time 50% off regular price for new customers. Upfront payment required. $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan. Taxes and fees extra. Speeds may slow after 50 gigabytes per month when network is busy. See terms. You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
When you read over Kurt Cobain's autopsy report, there's an interesting comment that is made by the pathologist that did the autopsy. This out in King County, Seattle. They talk about how when you observe, now at autopsy, they would have opened his mouth very widely. And I have my suspicions that they very well could have freed his jaw up a little bit, perhaps do that. I've had to do that where there's kind of an incision that's made where you have to free the jaw up in order to observe these are called intraoral gunshot wounds, or shotgun wounds in this case, so that you can access it. Think about a dentist working inside of a mouth, and they have to work in a very tight space, okay? Even with the dead, you have to be able to get access to the mouth to observe any kind of injury. And we always check the mouth anyway, and the throat and all these sorts of things when we're doing autopsies to make sure the airway is clear, that there's no observable debris, that's contained therein. But the pathologist that was in charge of this autopsy, Dave, made a very interesting observation here. They report that there was evidence of what's referred to as fouling, and that's Fouling, fouling, but no evidence of stippling. Now, that gives us a bit of insight into the dynamic of this weapon being discharged into his oral cavity. When the doctor looked at this injury that's up on the hard palate, if you, well, I'm not asking anybody out there to stick your finger in your mouth, but if you go to the rear of your mouth, the roof of your mouth, that hard area up there, which is referred to as the hard palate, that's actually a bony structure that is covered with the soft tissue, the lining of the mouth. He could actually appreciate a half moon shape up there that would give you the indication at an acute angle. If you think about the end of a barrel, if you were to press, say, the end of a barrel into a piece of Play-Doh, right? And you pull the Play-Doh away and you look at it, you're going to have a perfect circle, right? So pretend that's a mouth and you're having to do it at like a really acute angle. When that weapon is pressed up in to the roof of the mouth, if you think about it from the perspective of the face of a clock, from about the 9 o'clock position to the 3 o'clock position, there's this kind of arcing semicircle right there that he notes that there's fouling there. And that means that this area is burned. There's evidence of probably soot deposition on there that's blown into it, but there's no stippling around it. Well, what does an absence of stippling mean? Well, that means that all of the unburned powder was literally injected into his skull from the floor of the mouth. So we can take away from that this weapon was not held at like a range, at like a great range. It was actually pressed in. Okay, pressed in, and you have what's referred to as a hard contact or a press contact gunshot wound. Dave, most of the time when you see these firearms-related self-inflicted shots like this, that's generally at one's own hand, okay? Mm-hmm. With this caveat, let me explain. Just give me a little rope here. So most people want to make sure that the injury they're going to sustain is going to be successful. So as the weapon is pressed in, they will mightily press this weapon in, and it'll create almost a perfect circle. You see it all the time with handguns, weapons that are pressed directly into the head, okay? When it's really difficult is if you've got someone that is attempting to do this to another person with a weapon. What's our natural response? Well, it's to pull our head away. The only way you can really get this kind of press contact when it's a homicidal event is you would have to do something that's called shoring, which means that the opposite side of the head would be pressed against a fixed object like a wall, and you would hold them in place and press the weapon tight. And that way it creates this perfect seal. And you get this catastrophic injury because it's not just the projectiles that are going into this area. It's not just the soot and the smoke. It's this incredible discharge of hot, expanding gas. There's like a little flame that extends. So this injury was from front to back and I think it's from right to left. So it was slightly off in this position, and it enters into the cranial vault there. Now, here's the thing about the study that they've done, and it's very intriguing to me. When you think about someone, and we've talked about this already, when you think about someone that is under the influence of heroin, they're in almost a dreamlike state, okay? Maybe unconscious, completely unconscious. I've interviewed heroin addicts that have just fixed out on the street, and they can have a conversation with you like it's just an everyday event for them. Again, Dave, that goes back to the tolerance that we were talking about. Then again, I've had other people where I've had to put my hand on their shoulder and like shake them. Hey, what's your partner's name? What's his name? Because there would be another guy there that was dead. If he is in a state that is dreamlike, okay, in this state, is it possible that someone could have taken this Remington Model 11, opened his mouth, and created a press contact gunshot wound in the roof of his mouth, and he would not have been resistant to it. I think that's an interesting question, from our perspective.
When you're talking about the volume here of heroin that he's got on board, which has been articulated to be 3 to 10 times stronger than what the normal person could handle.
Yeah.
It's a death level. He died.
Yeah, it's a lethal level. Yeah.
So how long do you have? Because you have to remember that if he is alone, then he was able to inject this massive amount of heroin, cap the needle, put it neatly back into whatever little kit he had, then grab the gun, place it into his mouth, and pull the trigger.
Yep.
And he has to do all that right after taking a massive amount of heroin that would have knocked him out, because it ended up killing him. It was enough to kill the man, but he was somehow able to survive that long enough to get the gun. And, that's the part that I have a little problem with.
That's the rub. And this is where toxicology meets the reality of firearms. And also the drug dependency that he was operating in that world, a world that he was very, very used to. It's certainly a problem. And I'll go ahead and say this. I already told you I was going to say it. There's a principle that's put forth relative to those that want to take their own lives. It's called lethal redundancy. And so certain people want guarantees that certain outcomes are going to occur, right? Mm-hmm. There's a book that was written many years ago that was called Final Exit, is the name of the book. And it was written by a guy named Derek Humphrey, I think is his name. And his wife had died of bone cancer. Actually, she died as a result of an OD that he gave her in a cup of tea. He had these really strong medications. And so it was from that, they don't call it unaliving yourself. They call it self-deliverance. And it's almost, this book is like a recipe book. And it's no new revelations here. This thing's been out there forever. But one of the things that's in that book are like guarantees. And I've worked several of these cases. I had like the one that jumps to mind for me is I actually had a lady. Do you know what drug blister packs look like? Doctors used to give samples and this sort of thing. Dave, this lady had 5 drug blister packs of Ambien, and she took all of that Ambien. She took all of her hypertension medication. What else did she take? It was a huge cocktail of drugs that she took. You say, well, Morgan, what does that mean? How does that play into redundancy? Oh, by the by, she ran a warm bath that was right up to the top. So once she passed out, if the drugs didn't kill her, she'd slip beneath the waves or beneath the surface of the water. And we found evidence that there was uptake of water in her lungs. But she also had a lethal dose of this cocktail that was on board.
Wow.
And that's the redundancy. If somebody is bound and determined to do this.
Wow.
One of the other things that has been raised in this new study, and I recommend anybody that wants to read this, please do yourself a favor. It was actually the authors are actually a gentleman named Brian Burnett and Michelle Wilkins, and a tip of the cap for them to doing this. Because when I first heard about this, I'm thinking, what's their angle? What are they going for here? Mm-hmm. Certainly, they've got a movie in the works, or I hadn't just fallen off the turnip truck. But one of the reasons that I'm very compelled by this and the fact that they did the study is it's actually in a recognized peer-reviewed forensic science journal. And the journal is actually called the International Journal of Forensic Science. So, friends, we'll make sure that that's in the note relative to this so that you can go check it out. But, one of the things that they talk about is that there was an absence of blood deposition on his hands. Okay. So when Cobain is found on the floor between his index finger and his thumb, that's how he's gripping the muzzle of this weapon. Okay. And it's not near his mouth. It's down. It's like resting on his chest, kind of in a slightly diagonal presentation. But one of the things they say that, that they talk about is that that's inconsistent with self-inflicted gunshot wounds. And I would imagine to a certain degree shotgun wounds, because shotgun wounds tend to be very, very messy. But it is not out of the ordinary to have this occur. I have had a lot of cases over the course of my career where I've had people that have self-inflicted and with a firearm, and they didn't have any blood deposition on their hands. So it all depends on the angle of fire, the positionality of the body, the target surface. We're talking about also containment within the head. It's not like, if you say, for instance, and this is kind of I don't know if it's a good choice, but say, for instance, if somebody had shot themselves in the chest, that would be different. But you have the example of, say, for instance, this is famous. It's been all over the web for years and years. The self-inflicted death of Bud Dwyer, the guy that was the Secretary of Treasury up in Pennsylvania, goes to the podium, takes out it looks like, I think it was like a Colt 357, and stuck it in his mouth.
Paper bag.
Yeah, pulled it out of the paper bag, and he's passing out notes to all members of the press there. And that adage, how the camera never blinks. The cameraman on this thing never flinched, and he tracked him all the way to the ground. And you can see, because of the nasopharynx area, the trauma that was induced there, the blood is just literally pouring out of his nose and his mouth live on camera. So you look at something like that, and there was blood everywhere, and he would have had it deposited on his hands. But I don't think that it's necessarily accurate to say that all deaths involving self-inflicted wounds, you're going to have blood deposition. I don't necessarily see that happening. They also talk about in their paper, they talk about organ damage and necrosis. Necrosis is kind of the death of tissue, and this is not something like when you go to do the autopsy, you're going to see grossly without the microscope. You're going to see necrotic changes. They're saying that, and this has to be microscopically, that the brain, there was brain and liver necrosis consistent with oxygen deprivation from heroin overdose, not rapid shotgun death. And, which is kind of, how did he die? Is it a heroin overdose, or is it a shotgun blast? I can tell you this. I have Cobain's autopsy report here in front of me right now, and his lung weights, which is something you look for in heroin ODs, the lungs will become they become very heavy, because you remember I mentioned those two guys earlier that I'd worked that case on, and they were cyanotic. You go into a form of congestive failure. Most of the time, the lungs are very, very heavy, and I will read you the weight right now. I was just looking at it. They are, let's see, the right lung, Kurt Cobain's right lung weighed 395 grams, which is odd, because the right lung is generally heavier than the left lung. Left lung has fewer lows because the heart is there. The left lung weighed 435 grams. And he's not a big guy, okay? But I think those weights would probably fall into the normal parameters for organ weights. He does have, it's noted that he did have a small amount of a frothy sanguineous liquid present in the trachea, which is consistent with if he had laid there, well, it may have receded, but with heroin, you will also see, just like with drownings, you'll see that frothy edematous cone, it looks like the head of a beer, that kind of comes out.
Yeah.
Listen, I got to tell you, I do not in any way think that this is their, chasing their tail here. I think that there is, from a scientific standpoint, I think that there's certainly enough here that a reexamination may be warranted, but here's the problem. There is no court you can go to about this. This is a medical legal decision, just like Ellen Greenberg's case. Once the medical examiner has ruled it a suicide, which they have in this case, that's what they're sticking with. And I'll go and tell you right now, they have just issued a statement where they said, we're not reopening the case.
Right.
So what's going to help this case, though, is that these people were brave enough to go out and do an analytical study. It has been peer reviewed, which means people in forensics have also reviewed this data. This paper will probably be presented at various meetings. I'm sure it may already have been. And maybe, just maybe, there'll be more answers in the future. But I've got to tell you, for those out there that are in crisis right now in their life, taking your own life is not the answer. It doesn't solve the problem. It certainly doesn't solve the problem for those that are left behind. So I would offer up this to you. If you're struggling right now, dial 988-SUICIDE. That's 988 SUICIDE. And that'll plug you into the crisis lifeline. If you're struggling right now, you know somebody that's struggling, reach out. There's help for you out there. I'm Joseph Scott Morgan, and this is Body Bags.
Aldous Hodge returns as Alex Cross, your favorite detective on television, for season 2 of the hit show Cross, now streaming exclusively on Prime Video. Critics called season 1 of the year's best shows, with over 40 million viewers worldwide. And now the story continues with a new season. From creator Ben Watkins and based upon characters created by James Patterson, Cross is Washington, D.C.'s most brilliant homicide detective and forensic psychologist. Fresh off his capture of the infamous serial killer The Fanboy, Cross teams up with the FBI to hunt down a vigilante serial killer targeting corrupt billionaires. As the case unfolds, Cross navigates a moral crossroads where the lines between justice and vengeance are blurred. Cross is back and better than ever. This season, get ready for a new case, higher stakes, but the same Cross. Watch season 2 of Cross, now streaming only on Prime Video.
Why have I asked my HVAC guy I found on Angie.com to change my grandpa's trachea tube? Because I was so amazed by how quickly he replaced our air ducts. I knew I could trust him to change Pop-Pop's tube while I was on vacation.
Make it quick, young man.
Aw, see? Pop-Pop trusts you.
I think we should call a doctor. Connecting homeowners with skilled pros for over 30 years. Angie, the one you trust to find the ones you trust. Find pros for all your home projects at Angie.com.
Running my small business was like playing basketball 5-on-1, and I was the one. Now, QuickBooks gives me access to a team of AI agents and trusted experts for the assists I need. Nothing but net.
Outdo it with Intuit QuickBooks. Feature availability varies by product.
You see it instantly. It's Coldwater Creek, the mark of exceptional workmanship, and signature touches inspired by a Mountain West heritage. Distinctive styles created from quality fabrics, silhouettes perfected with just the right drape, feel-good fits offering ease of movement, and thoughtful details to elevate your look. For a wardrobe you can count on season after season, visit coldwatercreek.com. Shop the new spring collection at 20% off $75 or more with code IHEART20.
This is an iHeart podcast. Guaranteed human.